Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a really big question. Are the 10 Commandments, an ancient moral code from thousands of years ago, still relevant in our super fast, super diverse 21st century world? It's a fascinating debate that pits ancient wisdom against our modern, ever-changing ideas of what's right and wrong. So, let's get into it. First, for those who might need a quick refresher, the 10 Commandments are a set of biblical principles related to ethics and worship, central to both Judaism and Christianity. But even if you're not religious, you've definitely felt their influence. The real question is, do they still have something to teach us, or are they just historical artifacts? Let's start with the case for their timeless relevance. Proponents argue that the core of the commandments is a universal guide for how to be a decent human being. Think about the second half of the list, the ones that deal with how we treat each other. You shall not murder. Well, that seems like a pretty good rule to keep around, right? It's the ultimate statement on the sanctity of life. You shall not steal. This is the bedrock of property rights and economic trust. Without it, society would be chaos. Then there's you shall not bear false witness. In other words, don't lie, especially when it can harm someone. Our entire legal system is built on the hope that people will tell the truth. Honesty and integrity are the glue that holds communities together. And what about honor your father and your mother? This isn't just about being nice to your parents. It speaks to a broader respect for family, for elders, and for the structures that give our lives stability. Even the one about adultery, while legally complex today, points to the value of commitment and fidelity in relationships concepts we still wrestle with. Many of these principles are so fundamental that they form the historical backbone of modern Western law. While our legal systems have evolved dramatically, you can trace a direct line from thou shalt not kill to our modern laws against homicide. These aren't just religious rules. They are a blueprint for a functional, cooperative society. And here's a modern twist. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. In our 24/7 hustle culture, this commandment is having a major comeback. It's not just about religious observance anymore. It's a powerful argument for work-life balance, mental health, and the right to rest. It's a critique of the burnout culture that so many of us are trapped in. It's a radical call to unplug, recharge, and just be. So, from this perspective, the commandments are more relevant than ever. But, as with any big debate, there's another side to the story. Critics raise some very valid points against their universal application today. The biggest challenge: the first few commandments are explicitly religious. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. In our wonderfully pluralistic and secular societies, enforcing these rules would be a direct violation of religious freedom. The separation of church and state is a cornerstone of modern democracy, and these commandments are, by their very nature, theological. They are deeply meaningful to believers, but they can't be a mandate for everyone. But trying to impose them on a diverse population would be not just impractical, but unethical. Then there's the issue of interpretation and moral ambiguity. Let's take the famous "you shall not kill." It sounds simple, but the original Hebrew is often translated as "you shall not murder." That one-word difference opens up a huge can of worms. What about self-defense? What about war? What about capital punishment? The commandment itself doesn't provide the answers, and societies have debated these exceptions for centuries. The rule against adultery is another example. In ancient times, it was a crime against the community and property. Today, in most secular legal systems, it's considered a private, relational matter. Our views on relationships, sexuality, and personal autonomy have evolved significantly, and the law has evolved with them. What was once a public crime is now a personal tragedy, but not typically a matter for the courts. Furthermore, critics point out that the Ten Commandments are, frankly, an incomplete ethical guide for the modern world. They say nothing about some of the most pressing moral dilemmas we face today. What's the commandment for environmental ethics and climate change? What about bioethics, like genetic engineering or AI? What's the rule for tackling systemic social injustice, inequality, or corporate responsibility? The commandments are silent on these issues because they were written for a different world with different problems. They come from a broader legal and narrative context. The Torah pulling them out leaves a lot of gaps. So, where does that leave us? Are they timeless truths or outdated rules? The most common modern approach is a kind of synthesis, a way of finding the value without ignoring the problems. It involves separating the commandments into two categories. First, you have the religious duties, the commands about one God, idols, and God's name. These are seen as foundational for those within the Judeo-Christian faith, a personal covenant between a believer and their God, but they aren't, and shouldn't be, a blueprint for secular public policy. Second, you have the societal ethics, the commands against murder, stealing, lying, and the principles of honoring family and respecting commitments. These are viewed as foundational human values. You don't have to be religious to agree that a society where people don't kill, steal, or lie to each other is a better place to live. These principles reflect a universal human decency, the basic requirements for any civilized life. But when we strip them of their divine origin, the core message of respect for life, property, truth, and family remains incredibly powerful. They provide a simple, elegant, and effective starting point for discussions about how to live a good life and how to build a just society. So, are the Ten Commandments still relevant? Yes, but perhaps not in the way they were originally intended. They no longer function as a complete legal or moral code for our entire world, but as a source of foundational values, as a mirror reflecting our most basic shared principles, and as a starting point for deepest ethical conversations. Their echo can still be heard loud and clear. They remind us that for all our modern complexities, some truths are, and perhaps always will be, quite simple. What do you think? Are the commandments a timeless guide or a relic of the past? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your perspective. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more big ideas with us, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. We'll see you in the next one.